I never thought my own flesh and blood would turn on me like that. The look in my son Trevor's eyes was something I had never seen before. Pure rage mixed with entitlement as he stood in my living room, finger jabbing the air between us. "Divide the $500,000 now, Dad. I need my share." His voice shook the family photos on my mantel. When I refused, explaining the money was my retirement security, he exploded. "You're ruining this family." Then he pointed directly at my safe in the corner office and screamed, "This money is ours." That was the moment I realized the son I raised had disappeared. My name is Rufus Elliott. At 68 years old, I thought I had experienced everything life could throw at a man. I started my construction company with nothing but a second-hand pickup truck and a box of tools when I was 23. For 45 years, I woke before dawn, broke my back pouring foundations, framing houses, and eventually managing crews across 3 counties. My hands still bear the calluses and scars of decades of honest work. I was smart with my money. While other guys blew their paychecks on fancy trucks or weekend trips to Atlantic City, I invested, first in better equipment, then in property, and finally in a diverse portfolio my financial advisor helped me build. Nothing flashy or risky, just steady, reliable growth at compound interest turned into a retirement nest egg of just over $1 million. Susan, my wife of 40 years, always supported my cautious approach to finances. "Security first," she would say. We raised our 2 kids, Trevor and Allison, in a modest 4-bedroom home in a good school district. We never spoiled them, but they never wanted for anything important either. College tuition, first cars, wedding contributions. We managed it all while still building our savings. Susan didn't get to enjoy our retirement as planned. Cancer took her 3 years ago, just months after I sold the business to my foreman, Jack. The treatments drained $200,000 from our savings, but I would have spent every penny trying to save her. After she passed, I remodeled our home to accommodate my aging joints and settled into what I thought would be a peaceful retirement. Trevor was always my buddy growing up. He followed me around job sites from the time he could walk, wearing the plastic toy hard hat I bought him. By 12, he could frame a wall nearly as well as some of my apprentices. High school sports, fishing trips, teaching him to drive. We had the kind of father-son relationship I never had with my own father. At least that's what I thought. Something changed in Trevor over the years. He married Jenna, a lovely woman from a wealthy family, and they had 2 beautiful kids, Max and Sarah. Trevor got his business degree and took a job with a commercial real estate firm. They bought a house in an upscale neighborhood, joined the country club, and started living a lifestyle that seemed just beyond their means. I noticed Trevor's visits becoming less frequent, usually coinciding with his need for advice or, occasionally, a loan to tide them over until his next commission check. Last Tuesday, Trevor called asking to arrange an urgent family dinner at my house. "We need to discuss some things, Dad," he said, his voice unusually serious. "Family matters." I was actually excited. Since Susan died, the house felt too empty, and time with my grandchildren was precious. The dinner started pleasantly enough. Trevor, Jenna, and the grandkids arrived dressed nicely. Jenna brought her famous apple pie, and the kids showed me their latest report cards. But as we moved from the dining room to the living room for coffee, the atmosphere shifted. "Dad," Jenna said, casually stirring her coffee. Trevor mentioned, "You've been doing really well with your investments." Her smile seemed practiced, her eyes calculating. "Just steady and conservative," I replied. "Nothing fancy. It's just such a shame," she continued, "to see you living alone in this big house, sitting on all that money, while young families like us struggle with mortgages and tuition for the kids." I nearly choked on my coffee. Trevor had never mentioned financial struggles beyond the occasional short-term cash flow issue. Their house cost nearly $1 million, and both children attended prestigious private schools. "We're fine, Jenna," I said carefully. Trevor cleared his throat. "Actually, Dad, that's sort of what we wanted to talk about. Your retirement and your estate planning." And that's when I realized this wasn't a family dinner. It was an ambush. Sunday dinners were a tradition in our family when Susan was alive. After her passing, they became less frequent. so I was genuinely pleased when I managed to arrange one with Trevor and his family the following weekend. I spent the entire morning preparing Susan's famous pot roast recipe. The house was spotless, and I even bought special desserts from Max and Sarah's favorite bakery. They arrived just after 4 in the afternoon. Max immediately ran to show me his new video game, while Sarah gave me one of her crushing hugs that reminded me so much of her grandmother. For a moment, everything felt normal, like family should feel. Trevor and Jenna seemed tense despite their smiles. He carried a briefcase, which struck me as odd for a Sunday dinner. They brought an expensive bottle of wine, which Trevor opened immediately, pouring generous glasses for himself and Jenna. Dinner conversation revolved around the kids' activities. Max was excelling in baseball, and Sarah had won a spot in a prestigious dance recital. I listened attentively, soaking up these moments with my grandchildren. As I served dessert, Trevor steered the conversation in a new direction. "Dad, we've been thinking about our future lately. Financial planning and all that." "That's always smart," I replied, passing the ice cream to Sarah. "The thing is," Trevor continued, swirling his second glass of wine, "traditional inheritance doesn't really make sense anymore." Jenna nodded emphatically. "By the time most kids inherit these days, they're already established. The money would be so much more useful during the wealth-building years." I set down my spoon, suddenly aware that we were heading into the same territory as our previous dinner. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Trevor leaned forward. "We think it makes sense for you to distribute a significant portion of your assets now, while you're alive, to see us enjoy them. The kids' private school tuition just increased again," Jenna added, "and the mortgage on our house is substantial. Not to mention we're trying to save for their college." I took a deep breath. "Trevor, I'm still using my savings to live on. That's what retirement funds are for." "Come on, Dad," Trevor said with an edge to his voice. "We know you have over $1 million saved. You live simply. You don't travel. What are you saving it all for?" "My future," I replied firmly. "Medical expenses, long-term care if needed, and yes, eventually helping with the grandkids' college. But that's years away." "But you don't need all of it," Trevor persisted. "You could easily share half now and still have plenty." The children had wandered off to the living room, thankfully out of earshot, as the conversation grew more tense. "I've worked my entire life for that security," I said. "Your mother and I sacrificed a lot to build that nest egg." "And we're your family," Trevor countered. "Your only legacy. Doesn't it make sense to help us when we actually need it?" "I've always helped when there was a genuine need," I reminded him. Trevor's face flushed. "We need it now, Dad. For investments, for the kids, for our future." "This feels very sudden," I said. "What's really going on here, Trevor?" He exchanged a glance with Jenna before responding. "Nothing's going on. We just think it's time you considered the family's overall financial health instead of hoarding everything." The word hoarding stung like a slap. I was about to respond when Trevor pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Actually, there's something else you should know," he said, sliding the paper across the table. "I've been keeping track of your finances." I unfolded what appeared to be a bank statement. My bank statement, showing my investment account balances. "How did you get this?" "They still send duplicate statements to Mom's office address," Trevor said. "I never updated them after she died." The realization hit me like a physical blow. My son had been secretly monitoring my financial statements for years, calculating what he believed he was entitled to inherit. The invasion of privacy was stunning, but even more shocking was the premeditation it revealed. This wasn't a spontaneous request. This was a calculated plan. "This is completely inappropriate," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "My financial information is private, Trevor. We're family," he retorted. "There shouldn't be secrets about money between family." As I looked at my son across the table, I wondered how we had arrived at this point. When had money become more important than respect? The days following that Sunday dinner were filled with increasingly aggressive messages from Trevor. What began as occasional texts evolved into daily phone calls demanding that I be reasonable and think about family first. Each call became more insistent than the last. "Dad, I need an answer on the money," Trevor said during one particularly tense call. "Jenna and I have financial decisions to make." "I've already given you my answer," I replied. "The answer is no." "That's not acceptable," he snapped. We're talking about $500,000 that will eventually be mine anyway. Why wait until you're dead? His bluntness shocked me. Because it's my money, son. I earned it, and I need it to live on. You don't need that much, he argued. You're being selfish. After he hung up, I sat in my armchair staring at Susan's photograph on the side table. What would you do? I asked her silent image. She had always been the family peacemaker, but also fiercely protective of our financial security. The next morning, my daughter Allison called. At 35, she had always been the more independent of my children. She had built a successful career as a hospital administrator in Charlotte, married a kind physician named David, and never asked for financial help beyond her college tuition. Dad, Trevor called me last night, she said, concern evident in her voice. He was ranting about you refusing to share your retirement savings. What's going on? I explained the situation, including Trevor's secret monitoring of my financial statements and his demand for half my savings. That's outrageous, Allison said. Does he not understand what retirement savings are for, or how elder care costs can wipe out a lifetime of savings in just a few years? Apparently not, I sighed. He seems to think I'm selfishly hoarding money that should be helping them with their lifestyle. Their lifestyle is their problem, Allison replied firmly. Trevor makes good money. If they're struggling, it's because they live beyond their means. Her support meant everything to me, but it also created a painful division in our family. As the days passed, Trevor began trying to recruit relatives to his cause. My brother Gary called, awkwardly asking if everything was okay with my finances. My late wife's sister mentioned that Trevor had concerns about my financial decision-making. They were subtle suggestions, but the implication was clear. Trevor was trying to create concern about my mental capacity. A week after our disastrous dinner, I received a text from Trevor. Family meeting tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at our house. Financial matters to discuss. Bringing someone to help mediate. I should have refused, but some desperate part of me hoped we could resolve this conflict and return to being a normal family. I arrived at their sprawling 2-story colonial promptly at 7. The grandkids were nowhere to be seen, presumably upstairs or at a friend's house. Trevor ushered me into their formal dining room, where Jenna sat with a man I didn't recognize. Their dining table was covered with printouts, folders, and a laptop. Dad, this is Patrick Donovan, Trevor said. He's a financial advisor and has been helping us put together a proposal for you. Patrick extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Mr. Elliott. I specialize in family wealth management and intergenerational transfers. I shook his hand reluctantly, already regretting my decision to come. I wasn't aware this was a financial intervention. Not an intervention, Trevor said quickly. Just a structured discussion about how to optimize the family's overall financial position. Patrick opened a sleek leather portfolio. I've prepared some documents based on the financial information Trevor shared with me. We've developed what we believe is a fair and beneficial inheritance distribution plan. Inheritance distribution? I repeated. I'm still alive. It's actually called an early inheritance strategy, Patrick explained smoothly. Quite common these days. It allows the wealth generator, that's you, to witness and guide the beneficial use of assets while reducing eventual estate complications. I glanced at the papers he slid toward me. The top document was titled Elliott Family Asset Transfer Agreement and specified a transfer of $500,000 from my accounts to a newly created joint account in Trevor and Jenna's names. This is ridiculous, I said, pushing the papers back. I'm not signing anything. Dad, be reasonable, Trevor insisted. Patrick has structured this to be beneficial for everyone. There are even tax advantages. Tax advantages for who? I asked. Because it looks to me like you're asking me to give you half my retirement savings with nothing in return except empty promises. We're your family, Jenna interjected. Isn't our financial security return enough? I looked at her incredulously. You live in $1 million home. You both drive luxury cars. Your financial insecurity is self-created. Trevor's face darkened. You don't understand our situation. Then explain it to me, I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like nothing more than a money grab. Trevor exchanged a glance with Patrick, who nodded slightly and gathered his papers. I'll step out and give you family some privacy, he said, retreating to the living room. Once he was gone, Trevor leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Look, I didn't want to tell you this way, but I've already made financial commitments based on getting this money. What kind of commitments? I asked, alarm bells ringing in my head. I've put a down payment on a vacation property in the Outer Banks, he admitted. And I've committed capital to a business venture with some investors from the club. You committed my money without my knowledge or permission. I was stunned by his audacity. It's not just your money, Trevor insisted. It's family money. I'm going to inherit it eventually anyway. Not if you keep going like this, I retorted, immediately regretting the threat. Trevor's face contorted with anger. Is that how it is? You'll disinherit your own son for wanting his fair share now instead of later? There's nothing fair about demanding money you haven't earned, I said, standing up. This meeting is over. As I headed for the door, Trevor called after me. You'll regret this, Dad. You're forcing me into a corner, and I don't have a choice but to fight back. His words followed me out into the night, feeling more like a threat than a warning. The following Saturday morning, I was in my workshop finishing a birdhouse for Sarah when the doorbell rang insistently, followed by loud knocking. I opened the door to find Trevor standing there, his face flushed and a manila folder clutched in his hand. Behind him, I could see Jenna waiting in their SUV with Max and Sarah in the back seat. We need to talk, Trevor said, pushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. Good morning to you too, I replied, closing the door. The grandkids aren't coming in. They're staying in the car with Jenna, Trevor said curtly. This won't take long. He strode into my living room and slapped the folder down on the coffee table. I've spoken with our family attorney. These are the papers you need to sign to transfer the funds we discussed. I stared at him in disbelief. Trevor, I've already told you my answer. The money stays where it is. That's not acceptable, he said, his voice rising. I need that money, Dad. I have obligations. Your financial obligations are not my responsibility, I said firmly. Whatever commitments you've made assuming you'd get my money, that's on you. Trevor's face reddened. Do you have any idea what position you're putting me in? I've got people expecting this investment capital. The beach house closing is next month. Then you should cancel it, I suggested, because you're not getting my retirement money to fund your vacation home. Something snapped in Trevor then. He paced the living room like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Why are you doing this? He demanded. Is it some kind of power trip? Do you enjoy watching me struggle while you sit on a pile of money you don't even need? I've worked for 50 years to build that pile of money, I retorted. It's my security for the next 20 years if I'm lucky enough to live that long. Oh, please, Trevor scoffed. You live like a monk. Your house is paid off. What do you possibly need $1 million for? Have you priced nursing homes lately? I asked. Or cancer treatments? Your mother's illness cost $200,000 in just 8 months, and that was with good insurance. So you're planning to get sick? He challenged. That's your excuse? It's not an excuse. It's reality, I said. I'm almost 70. Health problems aren't a matter of if, but when. Trevor waved dismissively. If something happens, Allison and I will take care of you. Like you're taking care of me now? I asked. By demanding half my savings? $500,000 is nothing compared to what you have, he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. You're ruining the family over money you'll never live long enough to spend. The words hit like physical blows. Never in my life had I imagined my son would speak to me this way, calculating the value of my remaining years against his immediate desires. This conversation is over, I said quietly. I think you should leave. Instead of moving toward the door, Trevor strode across the living room toward my home office, where my safe was located. This is ridiculous, he said. The money is just sitting there, doing nothing. I followed him, alarmed by his behavior. Trevor, stop right now. He spun around, pointing at the safe embedded in the wall. This money is ours, he shouted. Our family money. Mom would want us to have it. Don't you dare speak for your mother, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Susan believed in security first, always. She would be ashamed of how you're acting right now. You don't know that, Trevor shot back. She's not here, is she? Convenient for you. Outside, a car door slammed. Through the window, I could see Max and Sarah approaching the house with Jenna following reluctantly behind them. Your children are coming, I warned. Do you really want them to see their father behaving this way? The front door opened, and Max called out, Grandpa? Dad? Trevor lowered his voice but leaned in close to my face. This isn't over. I need that money, and I'm going to get it one way or another. Is that a threat? I asked quietly. Before he could answer, Max and Sarah bounded into the room, oblivious to the tension. Grandpa! Sarah cried, running to hug me. Can we see the birdhouse you're making? I forced a smile. Of course, sweetheart. It's almost finished. Jenna appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and determination. Kids, let's not bother Grandpa right now. Dad and Grandpa are having an important talk. Actually, I said, putting a protective arm around Sarah's shoulders, your dad was just leaving. But you're all welcome to stay and have lunch with me. Trevor gathered the unsigned papers from the coffee table, shoving them roughly into the folder. We need to go, he said flatly. Kids, get your jackets. But we just got here, Max protested. Now, Max, Trevor snapped. As they moved reluctantly toward the door, Jenna lingered behind. Rufus, she said softly, I hope you'll reconsider. We're simply trying to secure our children's future. Are you? I asked. Because from where I stand, it looks like you and Trevor are trying to secure a beach house and investment capital, not educational funds for Max and Sarah. Her smile faltered. The market opportunity Trevor's found is exceptional. It could triple the investment within 5 years. And if it doesn't, I challenged, what happens to my grandchildren's future then? That's not going to happen, she insisted. Tell me something, I said. Does Trevor have gambling debts I don't know about? Is that what this is really about? Her face paled slightly before she composed herself. Of course not. How could you suggest such a thing? But the momentary flash of recognition in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. There was more to this story than a beach house and investment opportunities. Dad, Trevor called impatiently from the driveway. We're waiting. Jenna gave me a last, measuring look before joining her family. As their car pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling that what had just happened was merely the beginning of something much worse. The confrontation with Trevor left me deeply shaken. That night, I called Allison to update her on what had happened. He actually went toward your safe? She asked, horrified. Dad, this is getting scary. Do you think he might try to break in when you're not home? I don't think he'd go that far, I said, though uncertainty gnawed at me. But something's not right. This isn't just about a beach house or investments. I agree, Allison replied. Let me do some digging. Trevor's been acting strange for months now, even before this money demand. Over the next week, Allison used her connections and resources to investigate Trevor's financial situation. She had a college friend who worked at the same bank Trevor used, and while she couldn't access his records directly, her friend confirmed that Trevor had taken out several large personal loans in recent months. Dad, I think Trevor's in serious financial trouble, Allison told me over the phone. My friend couldn't give details, but she hinted that there are multiple overdrafts and declined transactions on his accounts. That doesn't make sense, I said. He makes good money at the real estate firm. Maybe he's been gambling again, Allison suggested quietly. The word hit me like a thunderbolt. Again? What do you mean, again? There was a pause on the line. You didn't know? Mom never told you? Told me what? I demanded. Allison sighed. During Trevor's second year of college, he got into gambling pretty heavily. Online poker mostly. Mom found out when he called her crying that he'd lost his tuition money for the semester. She paid it off from her personal savings and made him promise to get help. She never said a word to me, I said, stunned by the revelation. She made him go to Gamblers Anonymous meetings. Allison continued. He seemed to get it under control. Mom thought you'd be too hard on him, so she handled it herself. The news reopened the grief of losing Susan, while adding a new dimension of betrayal. What else had she sheltered me from regarding our son? I think we need to have an honest conversation with Trevor, I said finally. If he's gambling again, he needs help, not money. Let me come home first, Allison suggested. We should do this together. But before Allison could arrange her trip, Trevor called requesting to meet me alone. Just you and me, Dad, he said, his voice sounding tired and slightly desperate. No, Jenna. No, Allison. just father and son. We agreed to meet at a small diner halfway between our homes. I arrived early and chose a booth in the back for privacy. Trevor showed up 15 minutes late, looking disheveled and exhausted. Dark circles underlined his bloodshot eyes, and he'd lost weight since I'd seen him last. "Thanks for coming," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You look terrible," I observed. "Are you sleeping?" He shrugged, reaching for the coffee the waitress set before him. "Not much. Things are complicated right now." "Then uncomplicate them," I suggested. "Tell me what's really going on, Trevor." He stared into his coffee cup for a long moment. "I've made some mistakes," he finally admitted. "Financial mistakes?" He nodded slowly. "I got involved with some investments that didn't pan out." "What kind of investments?" I pressed. "It started with real estate flips," he explained. "Nothing too risky at first. Buy undervalued properties, renovate, sell for profit. I did well for a while. And then I met some guys at the country club who were putting together a development deal. Luxury condos on what used to be industrial property. The returns looked amazing on paper. "Let me guess," I said. "You put money in, and the project stalled." "Worse," Trevor said grimly. "The environmental assessment came back with major contamination issues. Cleanup costs quadrupled the budget. The whole project collapsed, and I lost everything I'd put in. $250,000. I whistled softly. "That's a substantial loss. It gets worse," he continued. "I'd borrowed against our home equity to make the investment. When that fell through, I couldn't make the payments." "Is that when the gambling started again?" I asked quietly. His head snapped up, eyes wide with surprise. "How did you know about that?" "Allison told me," I said. "About college, and how your mother helped you." Trevor's shoulders slumped. "Mom made me promise never to do it again, and I didn't, for years. But after losing so much on the condo project, I was desperate. I thought I could win enough to at least make the minimum payments until another commission came through." "But you didn't win," I said. "It wasn't a question." "No," he admitted. "I lost more. A lot more." "How much, Trevor?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "All in, including the property investment, the loans, and the gambling, about $480,000. The number staggered me. Nearly $500,000 in debt, with creditors no doubt demanding payment. No wonder he'd been so desperate for my money. "Does Jenna know?" I asked. "Not all of it," he said. "She knows about the failed investment, but not about the gambling. She thinks we're just in a temporary cash flow crunch until my next commission closes. You need to tell her the truth," I insisted. "I can't," Trevor said, his voice cracking. "She'll leave me, Dad. Take the kids. I'll lose everything." "You're already losing everything," I pointed out, "including your relationship with your family." "With me," Trevor's face hardened suddenly. "That's why I need your help. You could solve this whole problem with money you don't even need." I shook my head, disappointed that even now he was still trying to manipulate me. "The money wouldn't solve the real problem, Trevor. You need professional help for the gambling addiction." "I don't have time for that," he snapped. "These aren't patient, understanding people I owe money to, Dad. Some of them are connected to serious people." "Are you saying you owe money to criminals?" I asked, alarmed. Trevor lowered his voice. "Not all of my gambling was at legal establishments. There are private games with high stakes. I'm in danger here, Dad. Real danger." For the first time, I understood the true gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about money or entitlement. My son had gotten himself entangled with dangerous people who wouldn't hesitate to use violence to collect their debts. "How do I know you're telling the truth this time?" I asked. "This could be another manipulation." Trevor pulled up his shirt sleeve, revealing an ugly bruise on his forearm. "Last week's warning," he said quietly. "Next time will be worse." The sight of my son's injury sent a surge of protective instinct through me, quickly followed by anger at the impossible position he'd put himself and our family in. "I promised them I'd have the money by the end of the month," Trevor continued. "I told them my father was giving me my inheritance early. You had no right to make that promise," I said firmly. "What choice did I have?" Trevor's voice rose in frustration. "You've never supported my dreams, Dad. You always thought your way was the only way. Safe investments, slow growth, If you had believed in me enough to back my investment from the beginning, none of this would have happened. The accusation stung, but I recognized it for what it was, a desperate attempt to shift blame. I always supported you, Trevor, but I never agreed to fund risky ventures with my retirement savings. That's not lack of support, it's common sense. Well, your common sense might get me killed, Trevor hissed. So congratulations on being right while your son suffers the consequences. With that, he stood up, throwing some cash on the table for his untouched coffee. I needed a father, not a financial advisor, he said bitterly. I guess I'll figure this out on my own, like always. As I watched him walk away, his shoulders hunched in defeat, I felt the weight of parental responsibility pressing down on me. How could I protect my son without enabling his self-destructive behavior? The question followed me home, keeping me awake long into the night. 3 days after our diner meeting, I was in my garden when Trevor's car screeched into my driveway. He emerged alone, slamming the door and striding toward me with purpose. His eyes were wild, his movements jerky and unpredictable. "We need to talk," he announced, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. I set down my gardening tools and stood slowly, suddenly wary. "Let's go inside." In the kitchen, I offered him water, which he refused with an impatient wave. "I got a call this morning," he said without preamble. "They're not waiting until the end of the month. They want the money by Friday." "Who does?" I asked, though I already knew. "The people I owe," Trevor shouted. "Don't play dumb, Dad. You know exactly who I'm talking about." "Lower your voice," I said firmly. "This situation is of your own making, Trevor, and now I need your help to fix it," he insisted. $500,000. I'll pay you back. I swear. "With what money?" I asked. "Your gambling habit? Another failed investment?" Trevor paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair in agitation. "I've learned my lesson. This was rock bottom for me. Once this debt is cleared, I'm getting help. Going back to Gamblers Anonymous. Whatever it takes. I believe you want to change," I said carefully. "But giving you that money now would be the worst thing I could do for you. It would save my life," he protested. "For how long?" I challenged. "Until the next bet? The next investment opportunity? You need to break this cycle, not delay the consequences." Trevor's expression darkened. "So that's it? You're just going to let them hurt me? Maybe hurt Jenna and the kids too?" "Of course not," I said. "We'll go to the police, get restraining orders if necessary." Trevor laughed bitterly. "You think a restraining order will stop these people? They operate outside the law, Dad. Then we'll find another solution," I insisted. "One that doesn't involve giving you money you'll likely lose again." "There is no other solution," Trevor shouted, slamming his fist on the counter. "I need that money by Friday, or I'm dead." His outburst echoed through the kitchen, followed by a tense silence. I watched my son carefully, noting the sweat beading on his forehead, the slight tremor in his hands. He wasn't just afraid, he was in withdrawal. "When did you last place a bet, Trevor?" I asked quietly. He looked away. "What does that matter?" "It matters because I think you're still gambling," I said. "Even now, with everything at stake." "That's not true," he protested weakly. "Let me see your phone," I said, extending my hand. "What?" "No." Trevor stepped back, instinctively reaching for his pocket. "If you're not gambling, you have nothing to hide," I reasoned. "Let me see your phone." Trevor's refusal was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't just about paying off dangerous creditors. It was about feeding an addiction that had completely consumed him. "I'm going to my safe," I said calmly. "I keep emergency cash there. It's not 500,000, but it might buy you some time to get real help." Relief washed over Trevor's face. "Thank you, Dad. You won't regret this." I walked to my office, aware of Trevor following closely behind. As I approached the safe, I punched in the combination, shielding the keypad with my body. The heavy door swung open. From behind me, Trevor peered eagerly over my shoulder. "How much is in there?" Instead of answering, I reached inside and removed a single envelope. $5,000, I said, turning to face him. "Enough to get you into a good treatment program." Trevor's face contorted with anger. "Are you kidding me? 5,000? That's nothing. It's a start, I said firmly. A start toward getting your life back on track. I don't need a start, Trevor exploded. I need $500,000. He lunged forward, trying to look past me into the safe. I stood my ground, blocking his access. For a terrible moment, I thought he might physically shove me aside, but he stopped just short of actual contact. Get out of my way, old man, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. No, I replied simply. This ends now, Trevor. We stood there, father and son, locked in a standoff that represented so much more than access to a safe. It was about boundaries, respect, responsibility, and love in its most difficult form. After several tense seconds, Trevor backed away. Fine, he spat. Keep your precious money. When they find my body, you can use it to pay for a nice funeral. Don't talk like that, I said. We'll find another way. There is no other way, he insisted, heading for the door. You've made your choice. Now I'll make mine. As he reached for the doorknob, I noticed something protruding from his back pocket. A folded document that had partially slipped out when he lunged toward the safe. What's that paper in your pocket? I asked. Trevor froze, his hand halfway to the doorknob. Nothing, he said too quickly. Just some work stuff. Empty your pockets, I demanded. What? No, I'm not a child you can order around. I moved toward him, surprising us both with my suddenness. Before he could react, I plucked the folded document from his pocket and stepped back, opening it quickly. The letterhead belonged to a law firm I didn't recognize. The title of the document chilled me to the core. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship. What is this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Trevor's face flushed with a mixture of defiance and shame. You left me no choice. I scanned the document, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. It was a draft petition to have me declared mentally incompetent and to appoint Trevor as guardian of my person and conservator of my estate, effectively giving him control over all my assets and decisions. You were going to have me declared incompetent? I could barely get the words out. Only because you're being unreasonable, Trevor justified. A competent person would help their son in this situation. A responsible son wouldn't put his father in this position, I countered. This is a new low, Trevor, even for you. The lawyer said we have a strong case. Trevor continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Your isolation since Mom died, your refusal to enjoy your wealth, your irrational attachment to money you'll never spend. Classic signs of diminished capacity. The calculated nature of his plan stunned me. This wasn't a desperate measure taken in a moment of panic. This was a deliberate strategy to take control of my assets against my will. Get out, I said quietly. Get out of my house now. Dad, be reasonable. Trevor started. Now, I shouted. Something I had never done to either of my children, even when they were misbehaving teenagers. And don't come back until you're ready to get real help. Trevor hesitated for a moment, perhaps weighing his options, before yanking open the door and storming out. As his car peeled away from the curb, I sank into my armchair, the guardianship petition still clutched in my trembling hand. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. My own son had been planning to have me declared incompetent simply because I refused to give him money. The thought was almost too painful to bear. I reached for the phone and called Allison. You need to come home, I said when she answered. Things have gotten worse than we thought. Much worse. Allison arrived the next morning, having taken an emergency leave from her job. After I showed her the guardianship petition and explained everything that had happened, she was livid. This is elder abuse, she declared. Financial exploitation. We should file charges. He's still my son, I said wearily, and he's in real trouble, even if most of it is self-inflicted. So what do we do? Allison asked. You can't give him the money. That would be like giving alcohol to an alcoholic. I nodded in agreement. But we can't abandon him either. If these creditors are as dangerous as he claims, his life could genuinely be in danger. We spent the day discussing options, and by evening, I had made some difficult decisions. I called my longtime friend and attorney, Walter Freeman, who came over immediately after hearing the situation. First things first, Walter said, reviewing the guardianship petition. We need to counter this before he can file it. I'll prepare documentation from your doctor confirming your mental competence and a financial statement showing prudent management of your assets. And what about Trevor's debt, I asked. Walter frowned. If these are illegal gambling debts, they're not legally enforceable. But that doesn't mean these people won't use other methods to collect. Exactly my concern, I said. We could consider a structured financial arrangement, Walter suggested. Something that would help Trevor without enabling his addiction. By the end of our consultation, we had developed a plan. Walter would draw up the necessary documents, and I would invite Trevor and his family for a meeting the following weekend. In the meantime, Walter would make some discreet inquiries about Trevor's creditors through connections he had in law enforcement. When Saturday arrived, I was nervous but resolved. I had spent the week preparing mentally and emotionally for what needed to be done. Allison had arranged for Trevor, Jenna, and the kids to come to my house, telling them only that I wanted to discuss a family financial solution. They arrived at noon, Trevor looking haggard and tense, Jenna worried, and the children confused by the strained atmosphere. I had prepared lunch, hoping that sharing a meal might ease some of the tension. Before we eat, I said once everyone was seated at the dining table, I want to be clear about why I've asked you here today. Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Dad, if this is about our last conversation, it's about everything, Trevor, I replied calmly. The money demands, the guardianship petition, the gambling and the debts. Jenna's head snapped toward her husband. What guardianship petition? What gambling? Trevor's face paled. Dad, the kids are here, he muttered, glancing at Max and Sarah. You're right, I conceded. Allison, would you mind taking Max and Sarah out to the workshop? I want to show them the finished birdhouse. Once the children were out of earshot, I turned to Jenna. I think it's time you knew the full truth about your family's financial situation. Over the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything I had learned. Trevor's failed investments, his return to gambling, the extent of his debts, and his plan to have me declared incompetent to gain control of my assets. Jenna listened with growing horror, occasionally glancing at Trevor, who sat slumped in his chair, unable to deny any of it. Is this true? She finally asked him. All of it? Trevor nodded miserably. I was going to fix it, he mumbled. I just needed Dad's help. You mean his money? Jenna corrected sharply. Trevor, you told me we were just having cash flow issues until your next commission. $500,000 isn't a cash flow issue. I didn't want you to worry, Trevor said weakly. Well, I'm worried now. Jenna's voice broke. These men you owe money to, they know where we live. Where our children live. I cleared my throat. That's why I've asked you here today. Not to point fingers or assign blame, but to find a solution that keeps everyone safe. From a folder on the sideboard, I retrieved several documents that Walter had prepared. I've established a trust, I explained, placing the papers on the table. For Max and Sarah's education and future needs. A trust, Trevor repeated, confusion replacing the defensive anger in his eyes. Yes, it's structured so that neither you nor I can access the principal, I continued. The money can only be used for the children's education, medical care, and basic needs if necessary. How does that help our current situation? Trevor asked. I slid another document across the table. This is a loan agreement. I'm lending you $50,000 to negotiate with your creditors. Walter has already made contact with them through some connections in law enforcement. They're willing to accept a partial payment now, with structured payments over time. Trevor stared at the paper in disbelief. 50,000? But I owe nearly 10 times that. The people you owe know they're unlikely to get the full amount without attracting unwanted attention from authorities, I explained. They're businessmen, in their way. They'd rather get something than nothing. And the rest of the debt? Jenna asked. Will be addressed through a formal debt management plan, I said, presenting a third document. I've arranged for a financial counselor who specializes in gambling addiction recovery. The loan from me is contingent upon Trevor entering treatment and following the debt repayment plan. Trevor looked at the documents, then at me. Why are you helping me after what I tried to do to you? Because you're my son, I said simply. And while I won't enable your addiction by giving you unrestricted access to large sums of money, I won't abandon you to dangerous creditors either. What about the beach house? Trevor asked. The down payment is non-refundable. That's a consequence you'll have to accept, I said firmly. Actions have consequences, Trevor. I can help you address the dangerous debt, but I won't bail you out of every poor financial decision. Tears welled in Trevor's eyes. The first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in weeks. I don't deserve your help. No, you don't, I agreed. Particularly after you tried to have me declared incompetent. But family isn't about deserving. It's about loving each other enough to do what's right, even when it's difficult. I looked Trevor in the eye. I worked 50 years building my savings. 50 years of early mornings, aching backs, and missed vacations. That money represents security for my old age and, eventually, a legacy for my grandchildren. I won't apologize for protecting it, and I won't be manipulated or coerced into giving it away, even to my own son. Trevor lowered his head. I understand. But, I continued, I will help you find a way forward. Real help. Not just money, because that's what you truly need. Jenna reached over and took Trevor's hand. We'll get through this, she said, though her voice was strained. But there have to be changes, Trevor. Real changes. There will be, he promised, looking at me with what seemed like genuine remorse. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. Prove it, I said. Not with words, but with actions. Follow the treatment plan. Rebuild your financial integrity. Be the father and husband your family deserves. That afternoon marked the beginning of a difficult but healing journey for our family. Trevor entered treatment for his gambling addiction the following week. Walter's connections helped negotiate a settlement with Trevor's creditors, removing the immediate threat to his safety. The months that followed weren't easy. Trevor had to face the consequences of his actions, including downsizing to a more affordable home and making significant lifestyle changes. There were setbacks and difficult days when the lure of gambling tempted him again. But there was also growth. Real, substantial growth. 6 months after our confrontation, we gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my home. Trevor was 4 months sober from gambling, faithfully following his debt repayment plan and rebuilding trust with Jenna and the kids one day at a time. After dinner, while the others were having dessert, Trevor joined me on the back porch where I was enjoying the crisp autumn air. I never thanked you properly, he said, leaning against the railing beside me. For what? I asked. For not giving me what I demanded, he replied. I would have lost it all and probably ruined my life completely. Sometimes the hardest thing for a parent is saying no, I reflected. Even when your child is an adult. I understand now what you were trying to teach me all those years, Trevor said, about responsibility, financial discipline, building something that lasts. Better late than never, I smiled. Trevor looked out at the yard where Max and Sarah were playing. The trust you set up for the kids, that was genius. It protected them while still helping us. Money is just a tool, Trevor, I said. Like any tool, it's all in how you use it. It can build or destroy. I'm learning that, he nodded. The hard way, but I'm learning. As the sun set over my modest backyard, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. The money in my accounts was still mine, securing my future as I'd intended. But more importantly, my family was healing. My son was finding his way back to the man I always knew he could be. Sometimes, the greatest gifts we can give aren't financial at all, but the harder gifts of boundaries, consequences, and unwavering love even in the face of disappointment. In refusing to give Trevor what he demanded, I had ultimately given him something far more valuable. A chance to recover his integrity, his self-respect, and his future. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that hurt someone you love in the short term but helped them in the long run? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is not what someone wants, but what they truly need.